Welcome to our lesson on diastasis and connecting the abs. I am so excited to have you here for this lesson. So we're going to be reviewing a little bit of anatomy and kind of the how-to and looking more at a whole body approach for helping diastasis. But one of the things that I'm going to assume starting into this video is that you already know how to check for it. You know what it is, you know how to check for it, you're past that. But if you're not and you want a quick review, check the resources at the bottom underneath the video, and I've got a video for you of learning how to check diastasis. So simply check that out and then come back and join us here so that we can dive a little deeper. Okay, so when we think about diastasis, we think about a thinning of the fascia between our two rectus muscles. So we've got our rectus muscles, and those are the six-pack muscles that run up and down the front. And then between our rectus muscles, we have fascia. So everyone should have at least a little bit of a gap because there is a fascial band there. Okay, so sometimes I get people and they're like, I've got a half a finger gap. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's normal, like you should. And on top of that, most kids have diastasis as well. It's completely normal, and it's part of our developmental process as we work on gaining strength. So that's what I think is so cool when we look at diastasis recovery is if you look at the average 1-year-old when they try to sit up, they're gonna have gapping, sinking, or doming out of their midline because they have a diastasis. So if we think about them, and for most of them, it goes away naturally. You might not have even noticed. And if you have an older child, it's probably already gone. And so as we develop strength and we move our bodies more, that naturally goes away. So if we can take some of those childlike concepts and apply them into the adults, it can be really helpful for that recovery. But let's do a quick anatomy review, and then we'll dive into some of those concepts. So we want to think about our obliques and our internal obliques, external obliques, TAs, and rectus when it comes to diastasis. So let's use our hands. Everybody join me. So I want you to take your hands and place them like you're gonna, like you have high pockets. You know, like you have a nice little coat on and it has high pockets. So go ahead and place your hands in those high pockets. You are being your external obliques. So this is the external obliques. So turn to the left, okay? Or turn to the right. What happens? When you turn to the left, your right hand tightens and your left hand lengthens, right? So this hand shortens, this hand gets longer. So when we think about concentric work of our external obliques, when we turn to the left, our right external obliques are going to be concentrically working. Our left external obliques are going to be eccentrically working. Now, when we think about internal obliques, that's the opposite. Hands in pockets, crossing body. So go ahead and take your hands, cross your body, put them in your pockets this way. So when you turn to the left this way, what hand gets shorter? Left hand, right? So as I turn to the left, my left hand gets shorter, which is a concentric internal oblique contraction. Okay, so concentric internal obliques. So let's say we're doing band work where we're doing rotations, all right? So a type rotation exercise. If we rotate to the left, that's going to be internal obliques on this side, on our left side, external obliques on our right side. So think about that cross-body movement, because one of the exercises I'm going to be bringing at you in the next lesson is a cross-body movement. So I want you to understand why we're trying to pull these together. Okay, so when we think about that midline fascia that's formed, we think about it being formed by the transverse abdominals, which are our deep abdominals, and those run like this. So there are corset muscles. So when we think about TAs, we think about them like this. They attach in the back into our thoracolumbar fascia, and they attach into the front into our linea alba. So that fascial band that runs underneath our rectus muscles. So our TAs are our deepest muscles. Okay, so we think TAs come in, run underneath. Now, your internal obliques actually split. So part of it runs underneath with the TAs, and part of it runs on top with the external obliques. Okay, so you've got this sandwiching going on of your rectus. All right, so when we think about putting tension on the linea alba, putting tension on this fascia in the middle, when our TAs contract, our internal obliques and our external obliques, it pulls and puts tension on the fascia. Right now we want to put tension on the deep fascia to provide stability and that nice stiff trampoline feeling. We're wanting to target a little bit more of the TAs and internal obliques. Okay, now the external obliques have a great role and they help to pull our rib cage down and in. So if we have good resting tension in our external obliques, it helps not to stress the midline open quite as far. Okay, now when we contract our rectus abdominis, so that six-pack muscle you think doing sit-ups, all right, when the rectus contracts, it pulls up and down, not sideways. So when the rectus contracts, it pulls and puts tension. So go ahead and take your abs right now and pull up and down. So pull up and pull down. See if you can feel how that pulls those muscle bellies closer together. Okay, so as you pull, it pulls the muscle bellies closer together. As they go closer together, what can end up happening as these muscles tense? What can end up happening is the midline can actually get a little bit squishy because we're not putting tension this way, we're putting tension this way. So when you think about how a muscle contracts, if you just simply know the origin insertion, then we can think, oh, well, that makes sense. So when your TAs fire, your deep inner abdominals, it pulls out, which puts tension on your midline. So you can have a wider gap with more tension, or if your rectus contracts, the six-pack muscle at the front, you can have a narrower gap with less tension. So what we want to do, okay, so hopefully you followed me through all of that. But what we want to do is we want to balance these out so that we are creating all the right sorts of tension so that we're happy with what's going on with our midline. Now, I see addressing a diastasis to me is almost exactly the same thing as addressing prolapse. Okay, so they're both basically gives in the fascial system. All right, so prolapse is a give in the fascial system in the pelvic floor. Diastasis is a give in the fascial system in the core. They're both pressure problems, okay? I'll say that again. They are both pressure problems. All right, so when you put too much pressure down, you bear down on your pelvic floor is going to balloon out a little too much, prolapse is going to pop out. All right, that's going to prevent it from healing, from improving that fascial integrity. Same thing happens on the diastasis. If we're not putting correct tension, we're putting too much pressure, you can have that doming out of the diastasis, which is going to prevent that from healing. The other thing we want to take a look at is providing enough tension. So if you have pelvic floor tightness, then you're not going to be able to get a great contraction, which is then not going to change the tension on the fascia to help improve and help our resting muscle tone and our overall strength and help bulk up those muscles. And the same thing happens with the abdominals. So I've seen people with both very weak TAs, you can imagine a very weak pelvic floor prolapse, with very weak TAs, not able to put tension on the midline. And then I've also seen people with very tight TAs. Okay, so what do tight TAs do? You're like, Sarah, wouldn't tightening up my abs be a good thing? Well, not necessarily. So one thing I see is when somebody has tight TAs, think about it causing a cinching effect. So I see it all the time. Pelvic floor tightness almost always makes prolapse feel worse. All right, same thing happens in the abs. TA tension causes abdominal distension. So if I'm here and I squeeze the sides, so go ahead and do that. Take your hands and squeeze the sides. Do you see how your belly pops out in the middle? So I see this like bread loaf popping out of the belly when people have TAs that are tight. So why would TAs be tight? Let's see. Overuse, but also incorrect breathing. Because remember, our TAs are directly connected with our breathing system. So that brings us back to our foundation. All right, yay. Hopefully I'm not losing you. This stuff is so fun and interesting, but when we really dive in and talk about those base concepts and being able to apply them, then we kind of look at the mechanical issues in the body a little bit differently for getting them to work. Keeping this in mind, we want to set up our system for success, which means we don't want tight muscles and we don't want weak muscles. We want to find that balance, but sometimes that elusive balance is so freaking hard. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. It's so hard in the abdomen and it's so hard in the pelvic floor, and it takes loads of troubleshooting. But with some work and diligence and not giving up, you can get to the bottom of it. So one of the things we're going to be diving into is path of least resistance, right? Everything follows the path of least resistance, especially in our body. So we're going to be looking at breathing, we're going to be looking at back tightness, and then we're going to be looking at getting a contraction and optimizing how our abdominals contract. So in our next lesson, we're going to be diving a little bit into exercise, and just like anything, there's always so many exercises to help address something, and so we're just going to be scratching the surface a little bit, But I want to scratch that surface and I want to give you something that you can walk away with where you can start applying it immediately. So let's go ahead and hop into our exercise session next. And I hope that that gave you a little bit more of a base understanding of how the abdominals work.